So next up today, in our second to last keynote, we have Kim Plewes. Kim is passionate about child labor and the plight of children around the world. She started her advocacy work at the age of 12 and almost single-handedly collected over 6,000 signatures on her first petition to the Canadian Parliament. A short time later, Plewes began working with Free the Children, and she was instrumental in implementing an array of early projects and programs. Plewes initiated and facilitated the Life in Action program in partnership with the Robert C. and Veronica Atkins Foundation. She also helped develop Free the Children's newest office in California and has worked throughout the United States and Africa. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. How's everyone's day going so far? Your mind's just full of ideas and information. You're kind of going on information overload. I can only imagine from the day so far. I just want to take a few minutes and talk about another idea to piggyback off of what we've just heard that has been really important in my life over the last 25 years. My first disclaimer, I'm Canadian, so you'll hear it come out, I have the accent, so we don't get preoccupied with it. But one of the biggest ideas that I've seen in my life, I kept getting told growing up that, you can't wait till you're 16 when you get your learner's permit, or just wait until that day when you graduate high school, or when you get that college degree, you can finally start to make an impact on the world. Life was very much defined, or being told to me to be defined, by these big milestones. And when you're little, it's like kindergarten graduation, and then it's like double digits, 10th birthday, but they become bigger and more important as we get older. And when I quickly realized, or not quickly, as I realized over the years, our lives aren't really defined by these big milestones. It's actually made up of every single small decision we make on a daily basis. And sometimes it's those smallest decisions that have the biggest impact on our lives and on the direction of our lives. And a key example of this, I'm going to tell a few stories before my own, is this gal here. Does anyone recognize her? Julia Butterfly Hill. For those of you that don't know her story, she's from California, and one day she was driving through the forest of the redwood trees, which are just magical, they're 2,000-year-old trees. Imagine something that's actually seen the last 2,000 years of our history. And she saw a lot of orange X's on the trees and realized they were going to get cut down and turned into paper products for us to use, and all the ways to use paper. And she realized that this wasn't okay, and she wanted to do something about it. So she used a very simple, small decision and decided, I'm not going to let this tree get cut down. So she climbed up into the tree she's in here, nicknamed it Luna, and lived in it for over a year and a half. That's a fairly big decision. However, it came day by day, a small decision that she wasn't going to leave this tree until it was safe, and 3 acres of trees around this tree was also safe. And it was through the support and the small decisions of people who would come by saying, like, I wonder if Julia needs water today, or an extra blanket today because it's cold, or some extra food, or someone standing there cheering her on as corporations have spotlights on her all night, or all the different things that they were doing to pressure her in the street. And in the end, these redwoods have been saved. A very small decision, but had a huge impact on her life, because she now travels around North America talking about environmentalism and what we can each do to conserve the environment. Or there's these two guys here, David and Travis, who grew up in some random small town of Canada. And they started their senior year of high school. They walked in on that first day, so excited to rule the school, finally. And they had their great first day, but noticed throughout this day of classes that there was a freshman who kept getting bullied throughout the day. It started in the morning where kids were snickering behind this kid's back, and at lunch it got to open taunting and teasing. By the end of the day, this kid was being threatened to be beat up after school. Because, for whatever reason, this freshman had decided a guy who was going to wear a pink shirt to school on his very first day of high school. Didn't have a message on it, it did not have a slogan on it, it was just like a plain, simple pink shirt. And David and Travis thought, this is not the type of school we want to be graduating from. This is not the environment we want for our senior year. We're going to do something about this and make sure the bullies know that this is not okay. So they called a few friends. It was back in the days, this might be before your time, of like ICQ and MSN Messenger. Yeah, well before like BBM or anything like this. And started to say, hey, tomorrow we want you to wear a pink shirt to school. They asked like 30 of their friends to wear a pink shirt to school the next day. One of them went out to Goodwill and bought some extra pink shirts. They thought, you know what, if 30 or 40 people can show up in our school of 800 wearing pink shirts, maybe it'll tell the bullies to, that this is not okay. So word spread, and the next day, 700 kids out of the school of 800 showed up wearing pink shirts. And a whole bunch else came up to them and said, we want one of those, we just didn't hear the message, give us a picture. And let me tell you that bullying stopped that day. And now throughout Canada, anti-bullying campaigns at schools, anti-bullying days at schools are all defined by the color pink. Because of a very small, very simple decision two guys made for someone they didn't even know. And that same ripple effect is something that I felt throughout my life, from my own decisions and decisions of others. This is my family. We're like a fairly normal suburban family. Grew up outside of Toronto. I don't know why we like pose with canoe paddles and something like but you know, that's what I don't know. I'm sure my father's decision. But we did that, and that was that. But we camped a lot. My brother and I played soccer growing up. Had a little dog that we had to beg and plead for, like so many other families in our neighborhood. But we looked very normal from the outside. Had everything but the picket fence. But inside, we were a very different family. And that's because my dad had been diagnosed with cancer when I was 4 years old. And so growing up, I didn't have the chance to spend as much time with other friends thinking about the world outside, because I kept thinking when I come home from school today, is my dad going to be in bed sick, or is he going to be able to take me to the soccer practice he promised to take me to? And that had big effects, of course, on my mom, who is working, the only breadwinner of the family at the time, raising 2 kids who were under 10, and then taking care of my husband. And I say this not because of the story of the cancer, but it was because of the small decisions others made that had big impacts on my family. 1 or 2 weeks wouldn't go by without someone knocking on the door at 5 o'clock saying, hey, I made a lasagna, or I made salad, or I made burritos, I ordered pizza. I've thought about you guys today, and I want to help you out. I want to be a really good neighbor, and I know that your mom's working late tonight. Here's dinner. Or, hey, I know you're supposed to go to that soccer practice, and your dad's got radiation therapy today. Why don't we take you over to soccer practice? Or invited us on other people's family vacations because they knew ours got canceled last minute. It was these small decisions that really didn't mean much to the people around us that had huge impacts on my own family's ability to get through this disease. And we could see the same thing happening in what Derek and I, my brother and I, were able to do for others when we were given that space as well. And unfortunately, my dad did end up dying of cancer, but that community that we had around us was an incredible support. And I started to be able to make those same small decisions when I was 12 years old. And it was because one day I was sitting in French class in grade 6, in 6th grade, and my teacher took just a few minutes before recess to tell us about the issue of child labor. I had never heard about it before. My dad was still alive at this point, so my life was really not focused on poverty in this weird continent called Africa or homelessness in Toronto, on what was going on at home. But she presented this issue in a way no one ever had before. And instead of just telling us abstract statistics or theoretically describing these issues, she read us stories of kids who were intimately involved in child labor. Showed us pictures of them, and read testimonials that they had provided on their own lives. There was something that day in that French class, as I counted the seconds to the soccer game at recess, that struck me like no other issue ever had. Because it was kids, my age, who could have been making the shirt I was wearing that day, or the soccer ball I was going to use that night at recess, or the fireworks we were going to use on Canada Day, our equivalent of July 4th, 4th of July, that could have been made by kids. But we blow up something made by kids who celebrate independence. It was it opened my eyes in a way nothing ever had before. And so even though there's a big soccer game again at recess, my 2 friends and I sat under a tree, we looked at the tags on our shirts and where it said made in China. It's the first time we ever thought, wow, this could literally say made by a child in China, or Burma, or Guatemala, or Cambodia, or wherever. We thought we've got to do something about this. But we're 12, from suburbia, in 1998, so the ideas of organizations with activities for kids wasn't very common, and the internet had really just been founded. I didn't have an email address at this time. So the options were very limited. But my friend said, you know what we could do? We could start a petition. And I've literally never heard of a petition before, but we walked back into class that day with a piece of paper from our binder, and we could start this petition against child labor. A few months later, we got into the local mall asking for signatures, and we became known in our community as the girls with the petition. And it was about 6 months later that I ran into another group of young people through an organization called Free the Children, that I'll dive into in a minute, that showed me that as a young person at 12,